Adam, and I am pastor to believers and to doubters, to unfaithful Christians and to faithful atheists. And here we are asking questions. And today's question is, when were you saved? Can you give me an exact day, time, and year of when you were saved? This is a very evangelical question, I guess. And it's not something that I am overly concerned about, but I wanted to talk with you about it today because today is Good Friday. It's Holy Week, the busiest time of the year for us pastors. So I'm on here a little bit later than usual. So thank you for sticking with me if you're watching the live show. And if you're listening to the podcast, a special shout out to you. So thank you for being here. When were you saved? My favorite answer to this question, when were you saved, comes from one of the most important theologians of the 20th century. Happy Good Friday to you, Allison. Thank you. My favorite answer to this comes from one of the most important theologians of the 20th century. He influenced all theology. All theology of the 20th century goes back to this person. His name is Karl Barth, Swiss Reformed theologian. Was asked once, Dr. Barth, when was the exact moment that you were saved? And he responded in all of his theological genius, I was saved at 3:00 on a Friday afternoon on a hill outside the city of Jerusalem in the year 33 AD. Oh, man, I love that answer. I love that answer. I remember reading that in seminary and somebody asking me, when were you saved? And I said 33 AD. And they were like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, Jesus says on the cross, this is one of the things that he says is, it is finished. And I've always wondered, like, what does Jesus mean? It is finished. And a lot of people claim that salvation is finished on the cross when Jesus goes to the cross and saves everyone. Karl Barth was a universalist. He got in a lot of trouble for being a universalist. And he says, I was saved, you were saved. We were all saved on that day, Good Friday, that first Good Friday in 33 AD. Now, why is that the case? Well, according to the New Testament, 1 John, where it says, we learned this from Jesus, that God is love and that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. These are the two definitions of God in the New Testament. And how did they learn that from Jesus? I think they learned it from the cross and 3 days later in the resurrection. But the cross comes first, and since today is Good Friday, I wanted to do a little meditation on the cross with you. Jesus came to show us God's love, that God is love, and that God loves you and all people. And he does that in part by going to the cross. Now, it's interesting because when Jesus first gives his mission statement, his manifesto in Luke chapter 4, it's all about social justice. You don't find the cross in Jesus's first teachings and preachings. It's only afterwards that he starts telling his disciples that he's going to be going to the cross and he's going to suffer at the hands not of God, but of the religious elite, the religious and political authorities. That's how Jesus understands his atonement. Not that he is paying a debt to God or that he is appeasing God's wrath. Jesus never says anything like that. He always associates his atonement with being handed over to the religious elite who are going to kill him. Why? Because he's causing some good trouble. That's why. Because he says in Luke chapter 4 that his mission is to bring good news to the poor and set the oppressed free, proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And that's his mission. And that mission inherently brings about some good trouble. He goes to the places where they get in the way of that mission, and particularly the religious elite at the temple. This is kind of the cause, the beginning, sort of the beginning of the end of Jesus's movement towards the cross. Palm Sunday, which starts off Holy Week, is Jesus entering into Jerusalem on the donkey. And then the next day, Jesus, on Monday of Holy Week, Jesus goes to the temple and shuts the place down, cleanses the temple. And that's really where they forcefully unite against him and work towards killing him. So that's where we are today on Good Friday. And how Jesus shows us on Good Friday that God is love and God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all, is that Jesus reveals the extent of God's love, that Jesus is the incarnation of God, of God's love. However you think about the incarnation, Jesus is in some sense revealing who God is at the most fundamental level. That's the Christian tradition of the incarnation that we celebrate on our other favorite holiday, Christmas, right? So Jesus shows us, reveals to us who God is, and God is the one that humans can kill on Good Friday. This is why Christianity is so weird. No other religion has humans killing God. In fact, most other religions would be like, that ain't right. That's weird. And it is weird. But Jesus reveals that humans can kill God in the flesh. And God will respond on the cross through Jesus, saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's what God is like. That's the weirdness of Christianity. That God is not out to get you. That God isn't wrathful towards you. God only comes towards you in the spirit of forgiveness and love. That's what God is like, and invites us to participate in that forgiveness and love as well. That's the good news of Good Friday, that we can do our worst to God and God will respond with forgiveness. And in a couple of days, God will resurrect in Jesus. And the first words out of Jesus's mouth in the resurrection are not, you jerks, how dare you do this to me, when he comes to his disciples, right? I mean, you would expect that this would be the moment where God would come back in all of God's wrath through Jesus and, lightning bolts on everybody in divine wrath. But you don't get that in the resurrection. What do you get? You get Jesus saying, peace be with you. Repeats it again and again to his disciples in that upper room who are living in fear. And Jesus comes to them and says, peace be with you. I'm not out to get you. God's not out to get you. I got no lightning bolts. I'm not like Zeus. I'm out here to offer you peace and forgiveness. So it is finished on the cross. The full revelation of who God is, the extent of God's love, that God is love, period. A lot of people like to say God is love. Yeah, but God is also wrath. Well, no, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. That's what God is. God is the flow of love in the universe that flows through you, that flows through me, that flows through them, the flow of love in the universe, and invites us to participate in that flow of love, which doesn't, just say, oh, hey, it's all good. Yeah, you've harmed people. It's all good. No, it's that love helps us understand when we have missed the mark, when we haven't loved in the fullness that Jesus invites us to love into. When he says yesterday on Maundy, Thursday, when he is in another upper room with his disciples and they have supper together, and then Jesus is betrayed, where he says, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Well, that's a tough task, isn't it? You're asking a lot of us, Jesus. And I don't live into that fully. And I imagine that you don't either. Um, and when we don't, Jesus comes back into our lives and says, "Peace be with you." You can kill even God in the flesh, and God will respond with forgiveness and come back and invite us to do it over again, to try again and again and again. That's the good news of Good Friday. This is that's all I got for you. I'm exhausted. It's been a long week. I hope that was worth it. So that's a brief episode. We'll go to some of the. That was 10 minutes. Really? I only got 10 minutes for you today. Happy Good Friday to you, Allison. Jessica says, I was born saved, but I didn't know it until I was about 18. That's it. Yeah, you're born saved. That's what Karl Barth is trying to get at. You know, a lot of theology, a lot of, you know, Christian spirituality is basically you have to do something in order to be saved, even if that's like believe the right doctrines, right? This is on you to do something, which takes away Jesus's statement, "It is finished." Jesus came to do the hard work. He's done all the work. You are saved, and the invitation is to live into that salvation right here on earth. So all of this like religious anxiety, what this does for me, like when I first learned this from Barth, it was just like, oh, I could take a deep breath. You know, all that religious anxiety about what I need to do in order to basically save myself. That's what it amounts to. You have to do something to save yourself, which is basically throwing Good Friday away, because Jesus has finished the work of salvation. That's it. So yeah, Jessica, you were born saved, and you didn't know it until you were about 18. Well, I'm glad that you learned at 18 that you were born saved, Jessica. That is fantastic. So hi, Wintemi. Good to see you. And Melanie, hello to you. Princess says, glorious Good Friday, Pastor Adam and church family. Patty, I am so happy that I am online too, and I'm happy that you are here. Happy Good Friday to you, to Sime. Patty says my Good Friday is better thanks to Clackamas UCC. Nat, happy Easter to you from Sydney. I'm glad that you're here, Nat. Happy Easter to you. And I mentioned a little bit about Easter. I could say obviously a whole lot more about it, but it's in the Easter resurrection where Jesus fully reveals God to us, where there is no violence within God and within the resurrected Jesus, within the Gospels. There is no violence within God. God's not out to get you. God is just here to offer you peace. And then Jesus says, go spread the good news. Go spread the mission throughout the ends of the earth. Go make disciples. And when he's, there's a Christian, like, there's an interpretation of when Jesus says in Matthew chapter 28, the resurrected Jesus says, go make disciples. There's can be an interpretation of, Christian supremacy, forced conversion, stuff like that within Christian history. And I mean, when Jesus says, go make disciples, he is saying, go do what I did in order to make disciples, which was reveal God's love, God's radical love for all people, that God's healing, God's forgiveness is for everyone. That's how you go make disciples, not by warning them of the hell that God is going to throw them into. Hell is merely a product of our own creation. There's this tradition that tomorrow on Holy Saturday, Jesus descends into hell. And there he finds Adam, the first man, and he drags Adam and all of humanity out of hell with him, breaks down the gates, shuts down hell so that nobody can enter again. That's part of where Karl Barth is coming from as well when he says, I was saved in 33 AD. Jesus did all the work of conquering hell. And I suppose there's our part is basically to take that deep breath and to recognize that that's faith, I guess, recognizing that Jesus has already done all the hard work, and all we have to do is take a deep breath and relax into it and try as best we can to participate in God's love, recognizing that we're not gonna get it right all the time. That I think is faith. Jessica says, I say, you jerks, how dare you do this to me over way less. Yeah. That's I guess that's the difference between you and God, Jessica. So, oh man. Patty says, I'm thankful for peace be with you. I love you too, Patty. Thank you. Allison says, hope you can get a nice nap in. You covered what you needed to, so 10 minutes is fine. Thank you, Allison. April says, I wasn't saved. I was loved always. Well, maybe that is our salvation. I don't know, but you are always loved, April. Melody says, peace be with you all. The love of God is what I always come back to. Also forgive them. It's such a deep love when we humans crucified our God. Patty says, to treat all others with Jesus's forgiveness, even when you're hurt by someone else. It happened today. Yeah. Isn't it a difficult truth that you maybe learn over time, that the people that you probably hurt the most are the people that you love the most in this world? And I'm sure that the disciples loved Jesus when they abandoned and betrayed him. Peter, I have no doubt, loved Jesus. And when push comes to shove, Peter, would you say that Peter was a coward? If I say Peter was a coward, it's only because I would have been a coward too. I would not have been able to do anything different than what Peter did. Part of what is so great about Maundy Thursday and the betrayal of Judas is that, part of the tragedy is that Christian tradition has basically scapegoated Judas, calling him the devil. That's not fair to Judas. I think part of my spirituality has been recognizing the Judas inside of me and knowing that Judas inside of me is also forgiven. That Jesus is saying, Father, forgive them, and that includes Judas. There's that part where Jesus says it would have been better for Judas, the one who betrays him, to have never been born. That's not because Judas isn't forgiven by Jesus when Jesus says, Father, forgive them. Judas is included in that, but Judas can't receive that forgiveness for himself. He's racked with so much guilt. Maybe the difference, I think it was Rene Girard who said this, that the difference between Judas and Peter was that Peter was able to receive that forgiveness and Judas was not. Judas, for whatever reason, had shut himself out, thinking that he didn't deserve to be forgiven. And he was just racked with guilt, and he had no way of managing that guilt. And so, according to the Gospels or the New Testament, he unalived himself. Poor Judas. And so that's where inside of me, I want to acknowledge the Judas that's here in me. Sorry, I'm trying to swallow. And recognize that Judas is even forgiven too. The Peter inside of me is forgiven. So that's what I feel these 2 days, Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday, are all about. So sorry I'm getting all emotional on you. I hope that's okay. Even we're all human. We all get emotional. Patty says to treat all others with Jesus's forgiveness, even when, yeah, Patty, that's good. I love you people. You and your comments. Thank you for it. All right, friends. Well, Allison says that my 10 minutes was good enough, so we're gonna go with that, Allison. So we made it to 20 minutes, it looks like. So anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your Good Friday. Just know that you're loved. The Judas inside of you is loved. The Mary inside of you is loved. My goodness. I mean, Mary, the first preacher of the resurrection. Mary stuck around that tomb, the tomb of Jesus on Easter Sunday, when Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved, the beloved disciple, went there, and they were like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. And then they walked away. Mary stuck around, and Mary was the first person to meet the resurrected Jesus. And so maybe there's a Mary inside of you too, that is mourning, that is suffering. Mary is in tears when she meets Jesus. And maybe there's a part of you that's in tears right now. And when Mary is in her tears and she looks, she doesn't recognize Jesus. Her grief maybe is getting in the way of recognizing Jesus, right? I mean, that is totally understandable. That is totally human. And then Jesus says, Mary, to her, and then she recognizes Jesus. And I know that there are times in my life when I need to hear the resurrected Jesus say, Adam, and then I can maybe look and see Jesus, become aware of the resurrected Jesus who is right here in front of me, offering me peace. And maybe you need to hear Jesus saying your name. This is getting woo-woo. But here we are. The resurrection is pretty woo-woo. But maybe, it's one of my favorite spiritual practices. I've talked about this before, is kind of imagining the resurrected Jesus sitting in a chair across from me and just being silent and being in the presence of the resurrected Jesus. And the only words that the resurrected Jesus says to you are words of love, words of peace, words of I'm here with you, and you are loved. Because that's what First John says. God is love, and that's what we learned from Jesus, and in God there is no darkness at all. So, all right, I keep babbling. We're 23 minutes in. Todd, raised Catholic. I get it. Happy Friday. Jessica says, I love the woo-woo. Melanie says, I was raised Catholic too. All right. Awesome stuff. Thank you all. Todd, good to see you. All right, friends. Well, I hope that you have a great rest of your Holy Friday, blessed Good Friday, Holy Weekend. I hope you have a great Easter. Tomorrow on Holy Saturday, I'm going to be thinking maybe I'd invite you to think too about imagine Jesus going down, breaking down the gates of hell, grabbing Adam and maybe you, me, all of us out of hell and into salvation. Whatever that means for you, it means that God loves you. So, friends, hope you have a great weekend, and we will do this next Friday at noon Pacific time. So until then, may you know that you are loved. Grace and peace be with you.